Or yeah, all right. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ken Connors from CJAD 800, a friend of Tracy's, and welcome to this Hope and Cope conversation with Tracey McKee and what she learned after her cancer diagnosis. So thank you for joining us. We have a mix of cancer survivors, caregivers, healthcare professionals here with us today, medical students from what I understand, and of course, all the great Hope and Cope volunteers up here for this chat. And just a few things I want to mention before we get underway. We're going to be making time for questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can during the hour. You can use your chat features, of course. They function at the bottom of your Zoom screen for the question. We're going to try to make some time, I think, in the last 15 minutes here of our hour to have some face-to-face questions if you want to talk to Tracey directly. The Zoom chat's being recorded, but only Tracey and I are going to appear on the recording, so just a little note for you. And we're going to put everyone on mute so we can sort of minimize the background noise. All right. And in case I forget to do this at the end, a big thank you to everyone at Hope and Cope for the great service, the great support that they've been offering for, I think, almost 40 years now. And their programs and resources have been available to so many cancer patients for many, many years. And even during the pandemic, they've had a lot of their programs available online. And so they haven't stopped. And it's just great work that they're doing. So big thank you to them. Tracey, you ready to talk?
You know me, I was born talking. I'm ready.
Why don't we, a good place to start would be to go over your story, if you can, nutshell it, just get us up to speed on your story.
Yeah, I will nutshell it. It's funny because I did get some questions in advance asking me questions about when tests were, and I found my little journal because this was instrumental to me. I documented everything. So it says, when my mammogram was and my biopsy and my diagnosis. So it was August 1st, 2017, when I was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. So I was stage 2, but grade 3. So for those in the room, there are only 4 stages of cancers, and grade 3 is the highest grade. So kind of a scary diagnosis. And on that day, I was fortunate enough to be treated at the Jewish General Hospital, and they presented me with the possibility of being part of a clinical trial for triple negative breast cancer. And I had a day to decide if I was going to be part of this trial. I went home with the paperwork, and I actually drove right from the hospital to my sister's house, not the sister you see here, the other sister, who lives locally, and spoke to her husband, who's kind of got a science background. And what do I do? It was so much information, so overwhelming. And I decided, yes, I'm going to go for this. So it was swift. My first chemo appointment was August 23rd. So I was diagnosed August 1st, chemo started August 23rd. And in between those 2 weeks, I had a million tests, genetic testing, because it was a rare cancer. So basically my story was I had 6 months of chemotherapy, followed by a partial mastectomy, followed by 5 weeks of radiation. And then throughout the whole process, I had immunotherapy. So once the radiation ended, I still had another 6 months of immunotherapy, which is administered just like chemotherapy. Yeah. So I had the fortune of still seeing those fabulous nurses on the 8th floor of the Jewish General Hospital for another 6 months getting immunotherapy. So it was a long process.
Yeah. Did you wrestle with the decision on whether or not, because I'm a very private person, like how did you sort of approach that? Did you want to keep it private, or did you want to go public with it?
I wasn't private for 1 second. And I can't even explain why. Even when I hear myself, doesn't really make sense to me. But what I really want to make clear to all the people, because I know that there are people going through it now, or caregivers, this is my story and my way of dealing with this diagnosis. Because the one thing that I learned more than any other is that we all experience it in very different ways. Everyone's body is unique in terms of how we deal with the treatment. You can have 2 people side by side with the exact same cancer and the exact same treatment protocol, but their bodies are going to respond differently. Psychologically, our response to the situation is going to be different. I've never been a shy person. I've always a communicator in my heart and all my various jobs and passions. And for me, talking about it is how I process. So no, I make jokes that, literally I would run into people when I look like this, and they would say, how are you? I've got cancer. I was like, I would tell like the post office guy who's coming to the house. It was like how I kind of processed it for myself. It's only really when I started to write the blog, and I did that for myself to process, but the response I got from people, and I could cry actually with some of the stories that I heard. I realized it was helping other people because people don't want to talk about it. Most people don't want to talk about it, but for whatever reason, I'm comfortable with it. So here I am.
Good afternoon to anyone who's just joining us. We're only about 2 or 3 minutes in, so you haven't missed much of the conversation. I'm Ken Connors from CJ 800. Tracy and I have spoken on my show several times since your diagnosis. And I wanted to ask you about you and Rob and how you sort of approached your diagnosis as parents with the kids. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah. So when I was diagnosed in 2017, so how old were my kids? They were 7 and 11.
Yeah.
And 7 and 10, sorry. And the way my husband's a whole different story. Anyone who knows my husband who's in the room, including yourself, knows my husband is a very practical kind of, we're not going to wallow in this. We're just going to do what we need to do which frustrated me at times because I kind of wanted him to cry. I wanted him to, be there with me emotionally, but it's not who he was. And at the end of the day, he was a real support that way. I mean, there were times where this guy was lifting me off the ground, because I just didn't have any strength, energy. So I'm deeply grateful for that. For our kids, I made the decision because let's face it, it was really up to me more than my husband. I mean, we parented together, but it had to be me that was comfortable in how I spoke to my kids about it. I made the decision early on that I was never going to lie. I was going to be honest, brutally so. So when things were bad, I was honest. When things were good, they're going to believe me because I was honest when things were bad. That was sort of how I mean, of course, I made them feel comfortable that I was at one of the best hospitals in the world, getting the best treatment. And, it's hard to tell a kid, though, that you're being treated for something to make you better. And yet that treatment is making you so sick,
Yeah.
and it made me very sick. So that's a disconnect. And so and one other thing I really focused on is I was alone a lot during the day or at the hospital. Those were sort of the two states of being, alone or at the hospital. But I made sure I sat with my family, if I could, at dinner every single night. So for that normalcy, that one period, that's something my husband and I, we've always valued, the sitting around the table with our kids. And I really was there. I didn't always eat, but I was always there at dinner. Try to keep it normal.
So you didn't keep anything from them, like it was full transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He mentioned Rob picking it up off the floor a couple of times because of the state you were in. I think this is something you mentioned to me in one of our conversations on the air about you were kind of grappling with irked with the image sometimes that cancer patients have or are saddled with, like warriors, and battlers, and survivors, and sometimes you felt anything but that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure there are people in this room who feel similarly, like if one more person said, if you're just positive, you just got to be positive. I see thumbs up in this and that would just send me, because I'm a pretty positive person. I think you've known me a long time. I'm a pretty positive person, but I think it helps for sure. Your mindset, that's a piece of it. For sure, in terms of, being optimistic, having faith in the medical system, your doctors, that they're doing whatever they can to help, drive this beast out of your body. But yeah, I do struggle. I still do. I'm not even really comfortable with the term survivor because I don't really know what that means. Because yes, I'm cancer free, and I'm so grateful. Right now, I am cancer free. But what I now understand is that once you've been diagnosed with something like this, you're never really cancer free. And it's work to get over that, to kind of figure out what I need to do not worry about a reoccurrence all the time, to realize that, I'm the same but different. And in the popular culture, in the media, all the images, the pink campaign, because breast cancer is pretty and cute and pink, and the whole sort of warrior message, and the being positive and power. I would see images sometimes of cancer patients running marathons, for example, and I would think, my God, I can't even get off my couch, and this person's running a marathon, and it would make me feel like, what's wrong with me? But nothing was wrong with me. So everyone's different. Everyone's journey is different. But I find that we tend to want to kind of couch this in kind of like this little pretty little ribbon for us all to kind of feel like, but that's why places like Hope and Cope are so important, because I see smiles in the little boxes of some patients here are saying, yeah, exactly. Because you're really isolated. You have a sense of no one understands, but then you go to a place like Hope and Cope and you go, oh, okay, you understand. You get it. You know what I'm feeling. Because it's hard to want to, you don't want to punch every person in the face who tells you to be positive. That's not a good approach.
That's a mistake you're not going to make a third time. You mentioned work a second ago, and I think at one point you told me on the phone, just one of our chats, you said this is a full-time job that you work.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And again, not everyone is like that, but literally I remember I'm a bit of a type A personality, kind of a hands in lots of fires kind of person. And when I was diagnosed by the fabulous Dr. Jean-François Boileau at the Jewish General Hospital, and he told me, that I was going to have to stop work, I laughed. I was like, no, that's not going to happen, and then he was saying, well, no, it's stopped. And that is the thing, is that, and I think what I still actually look back on it, because for anyone who's going through this now, they said this would happen and I didn't believe anyone. It actually already feels like a lifetime ago. It's hard to believe, but it does. And so you're diagnosed, and from the next day I was done. I wasn't working. I wasn't in my theater troops anymore. I dropped the 2 governing boards that I was on. My treatment, my illness became my full-time job. And there were some positives about that, though, really. Like I learned, like, if anyone can imagine, our brains are so cluttered all the time with so much in there, right? Like stress. When you're in that place, that treatment place, and then you've only got one focus, which is to get well.
Yeah.
There's simplicity to it. Like I have to, it may sound really strange, but I felt kind of sort of zen about it all, in the sense that I was ready to kind of just, I did whatever I needed to do to get through it and to get well. And I just was focused on that kind of end goal, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but yeah.
No. I remember one thing we talked about at one point, and it was, I guess, post-treatment, where you said, because I wanted to ask you about the mental health angle of this journey that you're on. And you said you were in a real funk. You had the blues.
Yeah.
Once your treatment was done. Elaborate on that.
Yeah, so actually someone who's in this room sent an advanced question about, what was the biggest thing that surprised me. And I think that was it, is that when I was finished treatment, I expected to feel all this kind of euphoria. And of course I did, I was grateful. Of course I was. But I was more scared than I was ever during treatment. So all that peace and tranquility and zen that I had during treatment, once treatment was over, really shifted for me. And I don't know if it's a question of compartmentalizing all those fears and anxieties while you're in treatment. I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know. I can only tell you how I felt, and then you're finally done, and then it's kind of just all over you, like taking stock and account of everything you've just been through, and just hitting you in a big way. Because I would get upset. Like people would say to me, oh, you must be so relieved. You must be this. How's your health? And I would almost feel angry, like not able to really express how I was feeling. It was confusing. You felt a bit unmoored a little bit, but I'm
Mhm.
since learning that it's very common. It's
Yeah.
really common.
Did the doctors warn you about that?
The doctors were great. And again, they didn't so much warn me about it because again, everyone's different. But when it happened, they kind of just do the, yeah, yep, that's we hear that, from patients. But I will say that surprised me. So for the first time in my life, I took anti-anxiety medication once I was finished diagnosis, my treatment, something I never felt I needed in my life before, but I needed it, and I took it, and it helped.
Um, was a low point in your treatment when you had a really, really bad reaction at one point. I remember you called me and you told me that you had to go back, right?
Well, I joke that I'm an overachiever, and like if I'm going to get cancer, it might as well be a rare and really aggressive kind, like it's like you got to laugh, and that's sort of one of my coping mechanisms. And then even with the treatment, yeah, I had kind of a toxic reaction to the chemotherapy, and it was a tough go. And I certainly don't want to sit here and go over all that, because the last thing people want to hear right now is that. And again, that was my
Mhm.
experience. My neighbor, sadly, is far too common, is going through it right now, and it's like two completely different experiences of the of the treatment. But for me, yeah, it kind of knocked me off my feet, and I had to have, like, I had to do the gamut. I mean, I had to inject myself with Neupogen to boost my white blood cells. I had to have blood transfusions. I had to, and yeah, there was a time where I was kind of saying to the doctors, I'm done, I cannot take this anymore. And it's really important for anyone out there, you really got to talk to your doctors about it, because my sort of admitting and saying, because I kind of just thought, I need this is, I guess, normal, that how I'm feeling is normal. There was a part of me that wasn't going to question it, but I got to a point where I had to question it, and they said, okay, well, let's go back, review your case. And they were able to sort of reduce what's the word I'm looking for, like the
Dosage?
the strength or dosage, yeah, of the remaining treatment, so that it was much more palatable, and I had some really good anti-nausea drugs. It used to actually upset me because those pills were really, 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 really expensive, and sometimes I would take one and throw up, and I'd be like, oh, there's $500 down the drain.
Uh, Give me a couple of minutes on some of the wonderful medical professionals that took care of you.
Well, I can't say enough about the treatment at the Jewish General Hospital. I mean, truly, from the minute I was diagnosed, amazing, amazing. And the nurses on the 8th floor chemo ward, I mean, each and every one, truly amazing. From the vein whisperer, Marlana, anyone who's been there knows who I'm talking about. Um,
The vein
I
whisperer?
I call her that because she was just every time just so gentle and just got it right in, no problem. I can't say enough, and I'm humbled by that. I'm privileged and humbled to have access to such an amazing research hospital, and I'm happy to know that there are medical students in this room, because you'll be hearing from other patients, hopefully, who will be talking and asking questions, because I think it's so important to learn what each person's experience is like, and to learn from it. But I can't say one negative thing at all about the treatment that I got.
You once mentioned to me about. Let me see if I remember how you phrased it. But you said something along the lines like, "There's no such thing as the word should or the concept of should."
Oh,
What were you talking about then?
I'm glad you asked that, because I'm definitely a should person. Like all my life, I've been driven by, oh, I should go to that party, or I should call that person, or I should, you know, go run 5K. Um, Gladys El Halou, who is my angel, who was the clinical research nurse in charge of the clinical trial that I was on for triple negative breast cancer, was my primary contact always. And not only did she worry about my physical health, she talk to me constantly about my mental health. And she said very early, if I looked really fast, I would find it because I would quote her. I would write down things she said to me in my handy little notebook here. And she said to me once that when you've got cancer, there's no more shoulds. There's only I want and I think I can. And that's pretty powerful. And I really tried to live by that. So sometimes I'd get asked to do something and I'd go, do I want to do that? Do I think I can do that? And if the answer was no, then I didn't. And you know, there's a sort of a preservation, you know, about that. So yeah, very powerful words.
What did you indulge yourself in as a treat when you were going through your treatment? Did you get a wide berth from Rob on a lot of things?
Well, yeah, of course. What did I indulge? Well, I indulged myself in the wellness center. Honestly,
Yeah.
that was my place. That was my safe haven. I mean, that was where, you know, twice a week I did sound healing. That was where I would go and do exercise because I didn't want to go to my gym anymore. I had 0 white blood cells. Like the last place on earth I wanted to be was a gym. And also I didn't want people looking at me with my bald head at the time. So wellness center, like Hope and Cope and the West Island Cancer Wellness Center, they provide, you know, exercise classes and yoga and meditation and, you know, sound healing and cooking classes and journaling and all these amazing programs given by amazing people, where you meet like-minded people. That was my indulgence. I mean, how many times in your life, not to say this is something I would wish on anybody, but not very often in your life you have the opportunity or time to do that kind of thing. And I still practice sound healing now. It's something that I really resonated. Sound healing resonated, but it really resonated with me. And it's like these wellness centers, there's just such a safe place. You know, you're in a gym class and you're feeling tired. Nobody is going to question why you're taking a little break. You know, everyone understands why you need that little break. And yeah, for me, that was my big indulgence.
With your type of cancer, where are you right now in terms of your recovery and your progress? I mean, it's never over, right?
No, so, well, I mean, every cancer is different, and triple negative cancer, basically, I mean, it has one of the highest rates of reoccurrence of any cancer. And effectively it's 5 years from diagnosis is kind of that window where you're worried about it coming back. So I've just graduated 3 years since my first diagnosis. So I sort of look at it in my head, you know, a couple more years to go. Up until recently, I was still followed with an oncologist every 3 months.
Mhm.
Now I'm every 6 months. And then after 5 years, I'll be every year. So I celebrate every graduation. I had a couple bottles of champagne, you know, and I popped one on, you know, when I met the 2 year, I popped another when it was the 3 year. And I kind of celebrate these milestones. For right now, I'm cancer free. And that's what I focus on, you know.
I have a question from the text line. You want one?
Sure.
It's from Marcel, and it says, if you have a few words to say about cancer survivor, what would it be?
If I had a few words to say about being a cancer survivor?
Yeah.
About being a cancer survivor.
Or let me rephrase it. What advice would you give to someone or counsel to someone who's just received a cancer diagnosis?
Okay, so the advice I would give to anyone who's just been diagnosed is don't get on the internet. Don't get on the internet. Don't, don't, I mean, and you're going to, and I did.
Like Dr. Google, you mean?
Yeah, talk to your doctors, go to places like Hope and Cope and talk to the people there, talk to your nurses, because it can be pretty scary, you know, when you go to the internet and you read statistics and, you know, and don't lose hope because, you know, this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I mean, it's no longer the death sentence that it is. And, I met people in treatment who, were stage 4, for example, breast cancer. And then they'll tell me that was 10 years ago and I'm still here. You got to have hope. And because there's lots of reason to feel hopeful, I think.
Another one from the text line, actually, is there are 28 second-year medical students who are listening into the conversation right now. What would you tell them about dealing with cancer patients?
So I'll tell you something that has, now I am going to cry, but don't forget we're human beings. We're not just a number. We're not just a patient. We're human beings dealing with probably the worst news that we've ever received in our lives. And something that was huge for me, and this may sound like such a simple gesture, but when the doctor who gave me the news got down on his knee and looked me right in the eye and spoke to me human to human and connected with me in the eyes, I don't know, I just felt safe. Like I felt safe in that moment. And I had an amazing resident too, whose name right now is escaping me. And I wish I could look, because he's probably a full doctor now, but he was amazing. He read my blog and then he would come to me and he'd say, "You're making me a better doctor," so it's not forgetting that we're human beings, and asking us, how we are mentally, because the mental piece is a huge piece of this disease. It's not the physical. The physical, they have every tool in the world to help us get over that. They have everything at their fingertips, at their disposal. But what they don't have yet is this: the anxiety, the stress, because it's like all of a sudden your whole identity is cancer patient, and I haven't shed that yet. I'm still a cancer patient. And it takes a while, I think, to really, and maybe it's never, I don't know, I'm still in it, but that's huge. And the psychosocial support is huge.
Well, what an amazing gesture for your doctor to get down on, and
Oh yeah.
just that humanity, that
Yeah.
compassion.
Yeah, both. I had a whole team, as we all do, who goes through this, and Dr. Battist, amazing, Dr. Jean-François Boileau. These were my doctors, but I know that they're all amazing. And then Gladys El Halou. I think she hugged me every single visit, and yeah.
Goes a long way.
Oh, huge,
Yeah.
huge.
Here's another one for you, Tracy, from the text line. Feel free to text in on the using the chat function, and we'll pass on the questions. I have a question as a medical student, Tracy. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about anything else you remember from the specific moment you were given your diagnosis. If there was anything else that you found good or that you could counsel us to improve upon.
Well,
let's touched on it.
Yeah, what I just touched on, which is like, remember that is probably in my life, that was the worst news I'd ever been given. And to remember that we're human, to take the time. I still to this day say how fortunate I was that Dr. Boileau, I keep saying him because he was the one. I can't see him today without getting a tear in my eye. I love the man so much for everything he did for me. He really took the time to answer my questions, and there are a million questions, and some may seem silly, but they're not, right? When you're diagnosed, he kind of laughed, because one of the top questions for men and women is, will I lose my hair? To take the time to answer the questions, this shouldn't be okay, you got 15 minutes, go. What do you have? And the advice I would give to anyone newly diagnosed is, don't go to any of these appointments without someone with you, because the truth is that when I was diagnosed, he was talking and I was asking questions, but all that I was hearing was, oh my God, I can't believe I can't. Okay, how am I going to tell my siblings? How am I going to tell my kids? I can't believe is this happening? Is this real? Am I really? Is it like I wasn't even listening. So it's really important, I think. And I brought someone with me. My sister, who's here, came with me to appointments. My other sister did. I had friends who would come if my husband couldn't come, because it's good to have that recorder there, to make sure if you have that luxury and that ability to bring someone with you, I do recommend that. But I think the main thing the medical students here should know is that, because I'll tell you one thing, Cancer is so sadly so prevalent, so common. So sometimes you get a sense that that's, you know, everyone's got it. You know, like it's but that's, yes, that's true statistically. I mean, is it 1 in 4 women will have breast cancer in their lifetime? I could be wrong with that, but it's high, the statistic. But I'm a person right now with that, you know, and just don't forget that. It's oh,
You mentioned all the people that you had to rely on. You had a great, you were fortunate. You had a great network of people to drive you to your treatments, to sit with you through your treatments, and be there. And a lot of people don't have that luxury. And that's just another reason why an organization like Hope and Co. or the West Island Cancer Wellness Center is so important. And what they offer is just that sense that you're not alone,
100%.
that you
And
haven't been.
yeah, and you do feel alone. I mean, I would love to hear from other patients if they felt that way, but I know that a lot of times I would sort of sit through, you know, conversations with people, and in my head, my internal monologue was, but you don't get it. You can't, because and I hope you never do. I hope you never do get it. But you do have a sense of isolation. Oh, one thing never to do to a cancer patient, by the way, the thing that made me the most crazy
Oh, really?
were texts from people. How are you? How are you? For me, that was just so much work to try to answer, you know, 10 well-meaning individuals who are asking you, be more specific. How are you today?
Mm.
How was your last treatment? How did you sleep last night?
Yeah.
How, you know, how's your energy today? This may seem like silly advice, I'm telling you, because I would get, how are you? And I think that's too much work. I'm not even like, I mean, how do I even begin to say how I am? I don't even know how I am. I'm scared. I'm this, I'm that, I'm, you know,
Yeah.
and
You're gonna have to narrow it down.
yeah, exactly. Be more, show you care. The text, you feel good that people care. That's one major thing I learned in all of this. Honestly, wow, I'm loved. I felt that. I now know that. I'm 51 and I know I'm pretty loved. That's a pretty nice place to be, you know? That's something I learned.
Sarah has a question for you, Tracy.
Yeah.
It says here, 15 years out, I still panic whenever there's something amiss,
Yeah.
even a tiny innocent lymph node. Do you have any coping skills that you used or use when tiny things arise that aren't necessarily dire?
Well, you could tell me you're 15 years out. I'm just 3. You know, listen, I use humor a lot, and that may be off-putting for some people, but it's kind of the way I cope. Being proactive, certainly. I mean, even if you do worry it's something, see your doctor, because the reality is you are a cancer patient, you are a cancer survivor. So, you know, investigate everything. No, never, you know, talk yourself out of that. I mean, this is about to be something where it's like way too much information, but I've never had a good edit function. But just recently I was convinced I had bladder cancer, convinced I had it. And it turns out it was just a UTI. So that was good. But like that, but once you're a cancer survivor, that is exactly the first place your mind goes, because the reality is our cells betrayed us once, you know, and we all have cancer cells in us. So you're always thinking. So my coping mechanisms, was it Sarah?
Yeah.
My coping mechanism truly is one day at a time. You know what? I'm cancer free today. I really try not to worry about what could happen. And I try not to look at statistics. I really just take it, look where I am right now in a pandemic, you know, making the most of my life, my situation, my time here on this earth, and meditation. It really does help.
Joseph has a question here on the text line. It says, Tracy, during your treatment and beyond, how accessible was your medical team? And who were you most in contact with over the course of the treatment? Was it the nurses? Was it your oncologist? Or
Yeah.
what can you tell us about that?
So again, I was on a clinical trial. My advice to any person newly diagnosed, your first question is there a clinical trial on this type of cancer? First question I think you should be asking, because I am so grateful every day that I had that clinical trial, as scary as it was, because of course, when you're filling out this contract of 10 pages of medical jargon and, you may experience this, you may have this, you may have that, and you're thinking, oh my God, it sounds worse than, anything. So my clinical trial was immunotherapy, which is a future of cancer treatment. So as a result of being on a clinical trial, they want to know everything you're going through, right? So so I had access to my Gladys, my angel, who is my clinical research nurse, and at my fingertips, because again, when you're on a clinical trial, it's in their interest. They want you to be well and healthy and surviving, and they want to know everything. So she was a primary person for me. I mean, I certainly saw my oncologist regularly and my surgeon regularly. And then once I was in the sort of chemo and immunotherapy stage, you're given a primary care nurse in that environment. And mine was Mandy, and again, also amazing. And I could phone her if I had a question. Yeah, so I was very well supported and had constant contact.
Maggie has a question for you. Tracy says, hi, I had a partial mastectomy. How did you cope with the surgery? I went in the morning and took a while to get over it. Did you get breast reconstruction?
I did not get breast reconstruction. And again, everyone's different. I mean, mine is like a kind of a hole cut out of my left breast. It's funny. Well, it's not funny. See, I try to make everything funny. It's not funny, but I mean, I'm still dealing with it, because this summer I was at the cottage a lot, and I realized, oh, when I'm in a wet bathing suit, it really gets pulled into that hole quite deep, and you can see it, because most of the time, people aren't going to know that I've been through that. So what I would say is, whatever you're feeling about that surgery and how you're coping with it, it's worth talking to somebody about it. If you're feeling anxious about how your body has been changed. I don't know how old you are. I'm 51. Married, probably going to stay married to this guy. For me, I got to tell you, it wasn't a concern. So I don't know. I don't know what advice to give, except that whatever you're feeling is normal and valid and important, and you should talk to somebody about it.
Miss McKee,
I mean, I still feel it. Like and that's the other thing too, is that you're never, like, even every time I shower, because of course all the lymph nodes were removed as well as, and I still kind of, there's all the reminders, plus the tattoos that are on your body from the radiation. So like, you never forget. You can't,
Trace, another one from a medical student. It says, first of all, thank you for sharing your story. We often hear about the notion of post-traumatic growth. In what ways are you thinking you want to live differently after having gone through cancer? What has this experience been teaching you about your life?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question, whatever, because that is the thing, right? So we know good habits, bad habits, and their relationship to this disease. My first piece of advice to anyone who gets diagnosed is go easy on yourself. Don't start looking at all the things you could have done differently before. And, it's not your fault that you were diagnosed. That's my opinion. But going forward, that's a very complicated, tricky relationship. Like, every time I have a glass of wine, I think, I know I shouldn't. There's that should again, I know there's a link between this and cancer, but right now, I need this. I'm not a big drinker, so there you go. I'm really not, but and so it is complex. What have I done differently? I mean, I meditate. I do a exercise every morning. I got a dog recently, so that little dog has me walking 2 to 3 times a day. And all these things I know are good. Stress, like I really try to limit my stress, manage my stress. So I do sound healing. I do meditation. I even have the little crystal that whenever my kids are really getting on my nerves, I bang that little crystal. Breathe it in. So certainly there are lifestyle changes, but there's a lot of pressure on us.
Oh, Trace just froze. on my screen at least.
And,
There you go.
you know, there's a balance I think we all have to kind of meet.
You know, Lorraine has weighed in here. Hi, Lorraine. It's not really a question. I guess she just wants to mention that how difficult it is going through this during COVID, during a pandemic, and being told on the phone that you have cancer, and not even having seen the doctor since surgery, and going through it all with the benefit of someone accompanying her. So it's an additional burden and weight.
I can't even imagine, honestly. And it's funny because when the pandemic started, it reminded me a lot. I almost had like a post-traumatic stress about that because it was very much like my life was when I was in chemo, right? Everyone washing their hands and changing their clothes when they come in my house and not being allowed to see certain people and friends. And my heart goes out to anyone newly diagnosed in this pandemic. I mean, I wasn't diagnosed at that time. I can't even imagine what that extra next step level of stress and anxiety that presents for you. So again, the importance of wellness centers and, you know, reaching out to people and talking and sharing your story. I mean, more important, I think, than ever.
Another one from Eric. Hi, Eric. What service or support would you have needed that wasn't necessarily or adequately addressed?
Oof.
What service or support would you have needed that wasn't available or necessarily addressed?
Gosh. So nothing is coming to mind immediately, which I think puts me in a pretty lucky place that I don't, I mean, I feel like my psychosocial support was being taken care of. I feel like my, you know, my physical body and I mean, if I had a headache, I was sent for a CAT scan. I mean, everything was taken seriously. I actually have to think about that because I'm sure there's something where doctors could learn from us patients here in this room. But I really actually, I am so grateful for the treatment I received. I can't think of something off the top of my head.
Tracy, we're in the last 15 minutes of our hour together. So we're going to actually open the floor to anyone who just wants to talk directly to you and ask you a question.
Okay, sure.
Right. If anyone wants to do that, just so they can unmute themselves and talk to Tracy. In the meantime.
Hi, Tracy.
Oh, go ahead.
Who's that?
Trisha?
Hi, how are you?
It's with respects to the last question. I had my treatment and actually my diagnosis had started first at St. Mary's. I had a wonderful oncologist who I met on 2 occasions, but I wanted a second opinion. So I found myself at the Jewish General. I have absolutely no regrets. I had an evaluation for PTSD after 3 surgeries over the course of 7 weeks. And it relates to the last question, which is, I still feel, I know your situation seems almost like a Cinderella story in terms of cancer. But what is sorely lacking is there is no advocacy for women in terms of breast cancer. As you said, we'd like to tie it up in a pink ribbon. And I supported my daughter with Girls for the Cure for 5 years, marched every year, continued to support. And I can tell you when it was my turn, there was nothing. There was nothing from my surgeon. There was nothing at the hospital level. There was no one even during those surgeries. I wasn't even prepped properly. It was so disastrous that by the time I reached out to Hope and Cope, it was a lifeline, and they understood and they said, you're absolutely right. You will meet doctors, surgeons, technicians, everyone, but no one is actually going to sit with you and say, this is what lies ahead in your journey. And so I was completely unprepared. I was processed through day surgeries, including a double mastectomy and reconstruction. It took me months to recover from that, and only to find out this year, because of sort of cavalier doctors in the sense, oh, don't worry, Trisha, it's probably just scar tissue. We'll see you in 6 months. Lo and behold, my pushing, I ended up with a stage 3 recurrence as of August this year. So There is a link, I think, but there is a missing link, and I don't think Hope and Cope can serve all the needs of that. But in terms of, is there something in the future that we can do in terms of for women who are facing breast cancer? Be that the first time you meet the surgeon and says, guess what, looks like you got cancer. Could there not be a representative advocacy at the level from the hospital saying, all right, let's talk about this, and this is what you can expect? It was utterly terrifying, to be truthful. And
yeah, and I'm really sorry to hear that experience. And I do think the difference between yours and mine is the clinical trial. I really do. I think because I was on a clinical trial, I don't think I had any special treatment because of any other reason than I was on this clinical trial, which is why I say the first thing to find out. There's a website you can go to in Canada, you know, to find out any clinical trials that are existing in your, because then you just automatically have that access to that point person, you know, who does sit there and do all those things. So that's why I'm humbled a little bit by my experience for that reason, because I know it's not, you know, everyone's like I happen to be diagnosed at a time where the next day they were closing that trial. Do you know what I mean? Like, and honestly, I grapple with that sometimes. Like, why was I so lucky? Why me? Why, you know, why? But you can't, like, that's just my story, and everyone's story is unique. And I do think, you know, that kind of advocacy that I mean, they do have people at the hospital, but you've got to know that they're there, right? You've got to be told that they're there. You've got to, you know, and you got to ask for it. And we, you know, and unfortunately we are, in many cases, too overwhelmed and weak to be our own advocates at that point. And that's why I was saying it's important to also have someone there in your corner with you. But no, you bring up a very good point, and it humbles me because my experience was so different.
Tracy, we'll try to squeeze in a few more here. Nick has her hand up. Nick, can you ask your question to Tracy?
Hey, Tracy. Thank you for, hi. Look, my shirt that I'm wearing. Quick, thank you for sharing all of this. And over time, quick question for you about your screening back in 2017. Were you told, or was your breast density a factor at all in your type of cancer? And is that something that was brought to your attention when you had your mammogram?
So for me, again, I come back to Patricia, what I just said. I think like the stars aligned for me because it was a random mammogram. You know, my GP saying, "Hey, you haven't had one. You know, you're 40, whatever. Right. You know, go have." So breast density wasn't an issue for me. And the other thing is that had I not had that mammogram, my tumor was so deep that my doctor would have been misdiagnosed for a good long time before they came to the conclusion. Because that is one thing, is that when you're under 50, it's not their immediate go-to that it's cancer, right? It must be this, it must be that, it must be this, let's check this, do. So because of that.
But it was visible on the mammogram.
It was visible on the mammogram. So I had a mammogram June 2nd, and then another mammogram June 19th. I had an ultrasound June 20th because they saw it. And then I had a biopsy July 21st, and then a diagnosis August 1st. Yeah. Right. So again, as Patricia's saying, mine's a Cinderella story. I mean, there certainly was a lot of luck in terms of the timing, because the kind of cancer, triple negative, is so aggressive that, you know, finding it 6 months down the line could have been an entirely different story than what mine was. You know, so yeah.
Question Thanks. From I hope I pronounced this right. This is Dong Hong.
Don?
DZ? No?
Is there a question?
We'll go back. Dong Hong. How about Solomon? Solomon, are you there?
Yeah, hi. So I just have a quick question. So as a medical student, I'm interested in, you know, that doctor that you said kind of looked you in the eye and connected with you on that human level. So you mentioned that this doctor made you feel safe. So would you be able to kind of expand on that feeling? You know, it seems like this doctor has something that we could all learn from as medical students.
Well, I do think that's true. I mean, maybe he'll feel differently once everyone starts calling him and asking for advice and tips. But I would just say what he did for me to make me feel safe is exactly what I said, though. I don't know what more I can add, except that he really did look me straight in the eye. And I felt connected to him. I felt that he compassion. I felt that he took the time to answer my many questions, my husband's questions. And it wasn't just rhyming off statistics and, medical jargon that, I mean, it was a bit of that. And I would sometimes go, okay, wait, whoa, like talk to me like I didn't do well in science, like explain this to me because I'm not totally understanding. And it's really that question of just, he took the time. And I know that he had many other patients. I know he did, and was a very busy guy. He never made me feel that way, though. He never made me feel like he had to get to somebody else, if that makes any sense. Because it can be very, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, I'm losing my words, which doesn't happen often, but that's just like that feeling of being unmoored, like the floor is just like under your feet. So to have a doctor who makes you feel that he's compassionate or she's compassionate and that you're a human being, it really does go a long way. I don't know if that helps you. I hope so. But the fact that you're asking is a good sign. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Solomon. How about Vicky? Do you know Vicky? Tracy.
Vicky, is it my sister?
Yes.
Vicky, you know my story. What are you going to ask?
It wasn't me asking, but I have to say, I'm going to say this. I'm so proud of Tracy, like her bringing tears to my eyes. That doctor that got down on his knees, like I'm an educator, kindergarten teacher, and I think the biggest gift we can give people is to recognize that we are dealing with human beings. You rock, Tracy. You've been an inspiration to all of us. So bravo.
Thank you, Vicky. I should mention, while I was in treatment, both my sisters were diagnosed with cancer. Vicky was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and then my other sister, endometrial cancer. They went to their doctors after my, because I'm the baby, the youngest of 5. And so all my siblings went to their doctors. So yeah, it's certainly, and Vicky's doing well. My other sister's doing well. We're all doing well, but cancer certainly is far too prevalent. That's for sure. Thank you, Vicky. I love you too.
One from the text line, Tracy, I want to squeeze this one in. Thanks for sharing. I'm a cancer patient who was diagnosed in 2015 and had a relapse 2 years earlier and now under treatment. As you said, there are little reminders every single moment during the day. I found there's lots of grief, goodbye to work, goodbye to a constant alert reminder, goodbye to limited access to our favorite foods or favorite habits.
Yeah.
Just I guess a question about how you dealt with those matters.
Well, so it's funny because when you asked me my greatest indulgence, what first came to mind is, he's obviously never been through treatment, because you lose taste. Everything I ate, even water, tasted bad, like had a metal taste in its mouth. I had sores in my mouth because of the chemotherapy. I had to constantly have to wash with this what was it called? Magic mouthwash. Yeah, people are nodding. Which was gross. So things that I love to indulge in, I didn't. So it is a grieving process. Like I'm still grieving in a way because I'm not who I was before. And, and I'm still working out. I think I mentioned at the top that I'm working on a play right now, and about my story, and hopefully a universal story, and trying to work this out. But it's like, because there's also this message like cancer will change you for the better. Once you've had cancer, you're suddenly going to appreciate all the fine things in life. You're going to la la la. Well, you know what? I'm still kind of a jerk sometimes.
No.
There's a lot of like sort of pressure on you to be what the world wants you to be once you've had this kind of an experience. And I say we just have to go through whatever it is we need to go through, be easy on ourselves, and act with integrity and honesty, which is what I've always tried to do, and, you know, be who we are.
That question, by the way, was from Daisy. Thank you, Daisy, for that. And by the way, Sari just made me laugh out loud because she wrote, there I was blaming Dasani for terrible water. A big thank you to Hope and Cope for putting this together and this conversation. I hope it was beneficial and insightful for people who joined us. Thank you for joining us. Tracey, like in radio, we're going towards the top of the hour. I give you a minute for the last word.
Oh gosh, well, for the last word, all I want to say is thank you for coming. I don't want to be a poster child for this. I don't want to pretend that I have any answers more than any single one of you out there at all. What I have is an ability to speak candidly. And so that's what I'm, you know, why I accepted this invitation. And just to say that, to me, you know, what you've gone through is going to change you. What you're going through, it's going to change you. And you just have to be kind to yourself and be your own best advocate and reach out. You know, don't, there's so many resources out there for people like us that, you know, you really need to take advantage if you can. You know, it's not a should thing. If you can and if you want to, you know, take advantage of those resources that are out there. And I find that, you know, even our loved ones and friends, they don't know what to say to us either. They just don't know what to say. What do you say? You know, so, but don't shut people out, let people in, and just try to be honest. And, you know, I remember my Dr. Battis saying, one day this is going to feel like a bump in the road. And I'm not quite there yet, but I sort of understand what he meant by that when he said that to me. It's just, it's now part of my story.
Tracey, thanks for sharing.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks for agreeing to do this. It's much better having you than me just talking for 45 minutes. So I really appreciate it. And thanks to all of you for coming.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a
Thank
great
you.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.